Hello, homies, and welcome to Homeopathy Hangout, where I have got the most unbelievable treat for you today. I mean, I cannot even believe how lucky I am to say that we have Colin Griffith on the podcast. Welcome to the show.
Welcome indeed. Nice to be here.
Oh my goodness. So Colin hung out with us last week in the Homeopathy Hangout membership and did a 2-hour lecture on triads without taking a break, without taking a breath, without taking a sip of water. I was just sitting there going, how is he not even having water? There was just true genius. It was, I don't know if you are downloading this information or if there's something speaking through you, but everyone was literally on the edge of their seats. And even though we were all across the world, the electricity was unbelievable across Zoom. And in the membership, every single day, there are several posts a day of people who are still saying that they are blown away by your information. So I just want to say thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Um, and I want to tell you a funny story. So we have been, as you can see, I'm in the car, just for our listeners listening on Rumble. We were in a national park last night with no power, no cell phone reception, nothing. And I was interviewed on Alex Stewart's membership, and we've got Starlink at least, but it kept on dropping out. And I'm like, no, today is much too valuable. So we loaded the family back in the caravan, drove to the nearest town where there's cell phone reception. So now I'm connected to my phone. So hopefully we'll have a really, really good connection because I have a billion questions for you.
Right.
I have been waiting for this interview for 2 years because you have been really busy with the Master Practitioner course for a good solid year that you did with Centre for Homeopathic Education that I think took up all your energy, right?
It took up a year, frankly. I had to write a book to do it. And, that was a big take, but I enjoyed every moment on it. And something really interesting? When you do something like that, you learn as much as you're trying to put out to other people. And I just was amazed at how much more there is to learn.
It was incredible content. They do say if you want to learn something, teach. But one of the other things of travel is that, and you will know this, it's very hard traveling without your homeopathy books. I wanted to cry, but out of your 4 books that I have, I could only bring two. I am so
Oh,
gutted. So I've got the new Materia Medica 3 and the Repertory with me because I haven't made my way through new Materia Medica volume 3, but I have kind of flicked through the first two. Now, you have got some mind-blowing remedies in here that I want us to kind of unpack today, but I want us to start at the beginning and have you tell us how did these remedies come about and how did your proving group come about?
wow. Okay, so let's start with the second question first. How did our proving group come about? I see a homeopath called Janice Micallef, and she's been in practice for well over 40 something years. And she's rather a special character because originally her first job was as a radiographer in hospitals. And so her introduction really to homeopathy herself was how to get better from radiation poisoning.
Mm.
Now, you can't see radiation poisoning unless you're gifted with a certain type of second sight. She is able to see radiation, and that's very useful. And I'll explain why in a moment. A funny story. Anyway, so Janice became a pupil and a patient of a man called Martin Miles, who I mentioned last week in our podcast. Martin was an extraordinary character, and his teaching, his learning, stems all the way back to a man called Thomas Morn, Thomas Lackenby Morn, who was a druid. He was a head druid for a long time. So this is, we're stretching back here into the mists of time, especially when you talk about druids. Whether or not you have an interested in druids, I don't know, but nevertheless, he was a very pixelated, naughty-eyed old man with a long Father Christmas beard, and he was very special. Anyway, so I began to see Janice, and I realized pretty quickly that she's really the homeopath's homeopath. She treats more homeopaths than any other homeopath in the country. She has lists. She treats something like 250 families. She is extraordinary. Anyway, not that you'd know it because she never says anything. She doesn't like teaching. She doesn't like it putting her head above the parapet. She'd never do what I'm doing now. Absolutely no. Anyway, so I asked her, does she ever do tutorials? Nope. Okay. So then I asked her again, is there any do you ever do any teaching? Nope. But I didn't know that there were other people asking her the same thing. And eventually one day I got a call. Come to the practice, where she works, on Friday the something of something. and just bring yourself. You don't need anything else, just you. So I appeared. This was our first meeting of our group. There were about 12 of us, and we've squeezed into a little tiny room. We sat in a circle. I had never, ever done meditation before, and we were supposed to meditate for 4 hours. I thought, oh my God, am I going to need the loo? Am I going to need pencil and paper? What? Anyway, so we meditated on sulfur. As you might expect, sulfur is such a basic remedy. The second meeting we had, which was a month later, we meditated on calcium carbonate. So these sessions proceeded, and basically they were not your average tutorial. She never said anything about remedies herself. She just simply got us to meditate on certain remedies in a circle. And gradually, this circle, we all became friends. She'd managed to get together these very disparate people, because we come from all sorts of different kinds of backgrounds and different kinds of world. We do different kinds of homeopathy, but somehow we gelled, and at least to start with. And I didn't realize that she didn't really have a plan. She just was letting it all flow. Eventually, she decided to do a new remedy, which I think was oak. So none of us had done this before. We didn't know the remedy we were taking. And out of it came a transcript. Somebody was busily writing shorthand, because we didn't have microphones in those days. And we got a transcript, and I looked through it and I thought, oh my goodness, we've got sulfur, we've got calcium, we had conium, again, various others as well. And then we had oak, which was completely new to all of us. This is back in 1990. And from there, it just expanded until we developed in 2000, I think, or 1999, we developed a postgraduate course, which we called the Guild of Homeopaths. This was a mistake. It's always a mistake to give something a name which has an esoteric message. We didn't think of it like that. Actually, it was my mother who gave us the name, because she had an interest in medieval history and social history and so on. So she thought, oh, well, this sounds like a group of apprentices. What a good idea. And we didn't realize that we were setting the hive abuzz. And lots of people didn't like the idea, because we seemed to be a bit of a secret group. It was bad news. Anyway, we still have the Sobriquet Guild, especially when it's associated with the remedies. But we don't like using it, because actually it didn't really work. We weren't a group of people who were determined to change homeopathy, not at all. We were just people who wanted to learn. So that's how it all began. What was the second part of your question?
I,
Because I
I, I
completely
was just
forgot.
going to say, I don't know if I should break it to you, but you have changed homeopathy. You've changed it a lot with these remedies. So I don't know, maybe your mum had something there. I can't even remember the second part of it. It was basically of the
About
inspiration.
remedies.
I go into this trance when you talk, because your stories are so fascinating, and the way that you share it is so fascinating. There's something trance-like about it. It's just amazing. The inspiration, and I don't know if you know Janice's inspiration for oak, but the inspiration behind each remedy, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of different stories, but that's always something fascinating as well.
Yeah. Well, we never know now. There were we knew it was sulfur, we knew it was calcium, we knew it was conium. It was after that that we began not knowing. And there were lots of ones in those first year. Ayahuasca was one of them. I remember somebody coming into the group who wanted to prove this, not part of our circle, but who had shared with Janice that this was a really important remedy. And I remember being incredibly judgmental and skeptical, because this woman sat down in the circle and said good morning. She was very polite, very nice, and she'd brought a piece of ayahuasca liana. And I just looked at it and I thought, really? It was a bit of burnt twig. And I thought, come on, we're not going to prove that, are we? And now I can't practice homeopathy without ayahuasca.
Mm. I
It's
love that, Remy. I really love, like, with when you did the Master Practitioner course and all your other lectures, I love when you say how skeptical you were, and that you had to have things like your nose rubbed into things, like when it comes to chakras and stuff like that, because that's where I am at. Like, I'm so skeptical, even though I'm very interested in it. I think it's fascinating, but there's always that little voice in the back going, really? Really? Did you have that? Message from above, or is your chakra really lit up, or but
I am
like you
so much
said,
like that.
yeah, I think it's good to have that healthy skepticism, but Anyway, so are there like any like top remedies that really affected you personally? Were there ones that really stood out for you that made a huge difference in your life?
Yes, I think two certainly did. Many of them did, but not to the extent that Berlin Wall did. Berlin Wall was extraordinary. I did know. I was the only one in the group who did know because it was a remedy that I'd asked to have proved. And I asked to have it proved because I had a strange experience with it. A piece of the Berlin Wall was given to me, and I didn't know what to do with it. It's a very uninteresting piece of basically cement with bits of blue paint in it and bits of rubble. And this woman, who was in fact German, but had lived here most of her life and was married to a friend of mine, she'd been to Germany and brought this piece back and said, "Oh, I brought you a gift." And I looked at it and I thought, really? Again, really? So what? And I remember putting in a piece of bubble wrap and putting it in the back of the drawer because I didn't like it. And I forgot all about it. And then one day I was clearing out this drawer and I found this bit of rock and I thought, what on earth is that? This is several years later. And I thought, what is this? And then I remembered what it was. And I heard a bit more about the Berlin Wall. I'd also seen some of the politics about it. And I'd always wondered, how wise was it to have knocked the wall completely down? Should they not? This was my thinking. Should they not have kept some of the wall as a monument? A substantial part of the wall as a monument, as a reminder of something so horrific. Anyway, that was my own personal take. So I took this rock to Janice, who is able to hold something and remark on its history. She can sense the energy of something and remark on its history. So I had my session with her and I took this rock out of my pocket and I put it on her desk and opened out the bubble wrap and I said, "Janice, what do you think of this?" And she leant forward to look at it because she's not myopic or anything. She just looked at it in a sort of slightly quizzical, querulous way. And she leant forward and went, she had status asthmaticus. There's nothing wrong with her lungs. She just simply went into total shutdown of breathing. And she said, "Take it away." So I put it back in my pocket. And I said, "Janice, I think we need to make a remedy of this, don't we?" "Yes." So we did. When we did it, I remember that the group generally were very wary. There was an atmosphere, I would say a dark atmosphere. There was a suppressed atmosphere. And now we know that Berlin Wall is for oppression, suppression, depression, repression. Those four words, they're very similar, but they mean different things. And it's a terrible remedy in print. But two things happened. One is I became aware of how very significant this remedy would be for one of my children who had quite severe ADHD problems. He's very, very dyslexic and felt very oppressed by education, very depressed because he couldn't manage to cope, all those things. And having been through the meditation, I just knew, oh my goodness, he really needs this. I don't know whether he ever had it. I don't question Janice. She treats him, but I just knew. I'm sure he has had it. And the second thing was that I became aware of something happening inside my body during the meditation, which was very, very uncomfortable. There was as if there was some black force twisting its way out of me. And it was very uncomfortable to witness something that I had no control over. And I felt so grateful that Janice was the master of ceremonies, if you like, and knew exactly what to do to keep me grounded and safe. And I had the support of all my friends around me. Didn't last long. It's just like, oh my God, I didn't know this could happen. So I have huge respect for Berlin Wall, but I'm so interested in it because it's divided homeopathy for those people who want to think about it. I remember a person came, she rang me up and said, "Can I come and see you? I'm in your part of the world. I'd love to have tea with you and discuss homeopathy." She was a homeopath from the West Country and I'm over in the East. Anyway, she came and we had a lovely afternoon. It's a beautiful summer day. And she sat at our kitchen table, sipping tea and talking all sorts of things. We got on really well. And, quite silly talk as well as serious talk. It was good. And somehow the name Berlin Wall came up. The entire atmosphere changed. It was extraordinary. Everything went cold. And she said, "Well, of course, that's a load of rubbish. I was so amazed. I couldn't actually speak after that because she was completely destroying the atmosphere of the afternoon. And I don't think she did it deliberately. I think that was just her personal reaction. And I thought, yeah, this is Berlin Wall too. There's a smacking division, and it's really quite extraordinary. And she died 5 weeks later.
Oh.
Nothing to do with Berlin Wall, I'm sure, but I just thought, this is weird stuff. So that was my Berlin Wall experience. I think also Emerald has given me a tremendous service.
Mm.
It's an extraordinary remedy. It's about the wounded ego, which nobody talks about. You can't see that in the repertory. It's like, how does the I don't mean big ego with a big E, I mean the I. How does the I suffer? So it's not just a Nat Murish thing, it's how does the I suffer? And that's so useful. It's so useful. It
It's
adds another
it's
dimension.
it's interesting you say that about Berlin Wall because anybody listening might almost be scared using the remedy from what you've said, but I would
Oh,
say
no.
I have prescribed it at least a dozen times, and I've only had really lovely results, very gentle.
Yes.
It's quite a profound remedy. And I actually brought it with me on our travels because I wanted to give it to my husband at
Wow.
some stage. But I think it's a really, and I wanted to have a little play with it as well. I really like using it as a triad though. So I mean, triads have been used for a little while, but I kind of feel like you've kind of like popularized it or made it trendy because everyone's talking about triads. But I find that's super gentle as well. And I think, isn't Berlin Wall one of the ones that some homeopaths like to store away, like away from their other remedies? I think that's, and
Yes.
I've never had, we've got some funny little Chinese whispers in homeopathy. I don't know why we do that. I wish we'd stop it because, like, we make ourselves scared using remedies and doing things with remedies. I had my camphor stored away from my other remedies for quite a while, and I'm like, no, Eugenie, don't be silly. It's just energy medicine. And even my plutonium nitricum I had stored away. And there's so many other remedies that I hear homeopaths say, no, store it away. I just store them all together. They work absolutely great. So, yeah, I think Berlin Wall is actually an amazing, amazing remedy. Funny
Yeah,
story, one of the
really.
little towns that we went through on our way in South Australia is called Harndorf. It's an old German town. They were selling these beautiful German mugs from Germany, and each mug had an authentic piece of Berlin Wall on top of the jug with a certificate to
Wow.
say that it's come from the Berlin Wall. So on the lid, you know how you lift it and the little top thing comes up, it's got a bit of Berlin Wall on it. So I did think of you
Wow.
when we went through that.
Wow. Good.
Some, Something else I think we should address, kind of like almost at the start of the episode, is meditative provings, because that is something that can really divide homeopaths as well. And I think of is it like 99 or 100 remedies that you've proved with your group? It's quite a few,
Actually, no, it's many more than that. It's
more.
well over 250.
Oh,
Yes. Because
wow. Okay.
we've been doing it for 30 years. So
Wow.
yeah. And
So
the beginning of this is way back in the 90s. So yeah.
And I love, I think it's your first book that you describe how Janice creates the space. And I won't lie, when I saw that it's 4 hours and you're not allowed to leave the room, I was thinking, oh, my bladder won't hold that long, so I won't be able to join. But 4 hours and creating this sacred space that's held and then closed off afterwards, and all the, she lights up the chakras and does all these beautiful things
Yes.
to create a very sacred space. But I did
Very
read
much
that
so.
you do physically take the remedies afterwards as well. I think, and
Absolutely.
yeah, you did say that in there as well, which I was glad to read that. But talk to us about meditative provings because I know there's some homeopaths that are going to be like, oh, whatever. But actually, I've been part of a few myself now, and I was very skeptical, but I completely see their value, and it's helped me understand a remedy on a much deeper level doing it that way.
Okay. So yeah, proving remedies by meditation is not the last word. And I don't think, even though you've been reading the books that I've written on these remedies, I would hate to think anybody thinks they're the last word. They are work in progress. And we don't have a problem with anyone who says, well, we're going to do this the Hahnemannian way. That's not a problem. And we'll just add all the information. Indeed, remedies like plutonium, which have other provings, I have sought to include that information in my books as well, because the more information we have on the remedies, the better. And people's experience absolutely trumps anything about a remedy. So when we do a meditative proving, it's Only in the very beginning and back in the early 90s did we know what we were taking of the established remedies. And then it was made incumbent on Janice that we shouldn't know. And indeed, she doesn't know what she's going to choose before the day. One of these small cabinets, and on the top, she has about 120 remedies. They're all new, they're all waiting to be proved. She's no idea until the day which one she's going. And sometimes she will just go into her room and pull out a bottle, and that's the one. So it's very ad hoc, it's very random. But I think there is a point to looking at these three books in a slightly different way. So the first one, of course, is the earliest remedies, and they appear in comparison with the others to be really, really basic, grounded, base chakra remedies. They're about making sure that we're here. Oak, emerald, crystal remedies, tree remedies. They're making sure we're here. The second book is very slightly different. They've got some very peculiar remedies in there, radiation remedies. Now, this is not at all a surprise because Janice was a radiographer. She has a great deal of investment in understanding radiation. I don't think I'm putting my foot out of line when I say that Martin treated her for 2 years just with radium bromide before anything else would work. So that's from her years of using machinery, which was, completely imbued with radioactive energy, and nothing would work until he gave her time after time after time, radium bromide, radium bromide. Eventually, it left her. So this became an important thing. So there are quite a few radioactive remedies that we've looked at. And the third book is different again. This is actually quite ungrounded, if you look at it. Yeah. So although in there are remedies that are very, very grounded, like iron pyrite, they are crystals or they're minerals that have an affinity. Well, yes, there's the contents. There are minerals and things that should be grounded. They are grounded, but they also have an affinity for the things like the pineal gland and the pituitary gland and the thyroid gland. So this is much more towards the esoteric end of the scale. So in other words, there's been a progression from the earliest remedies like emerald and oak all the way up to these very odd ones like, for example, this will interest you, Australian sandstone, which of course, I know I'm not allowed to say this, but I am going to say it. This is in fact a piece of the Ayers rock, which the pharmacy tells us we're not allowed to call Ayers rock because you're not allowed to take any. I will promise you now, I know the person who gave us this rock, and she said it was lying on the ground a little way away from the bottom of the rock, so it was all right. And it was about that size. So
I
it's
did
talk.
wonder about that. I'm glad that you brought it up. There's actually a group, I don't know if you know this, there's a group of homeopaths that's going there this year to Uluru, and they are going to be making a remedy as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how the two pair up, and they're going to be triturating it at Uluru.
All the better. And you
It's
may find that actually one that's made like that is even more potent, if you like, with the esoteric stuff than the
mm,
one we're using. But the one we use at the moment is quite extraordinary because it's about tapping in with compassion to the pain of the world. It's very, very Piscean. It's very Neptunian. It's very broad. It's huge. And I'm glad we've got it because it's an extraordinary piece of work.
I've used it
Yeah.
once so far. What I need to do is just go through all my client notes and all the feedback that I've had from these remedies. I need to compile it all and then send it through to you, just with the feedback I've had, because I've used quite a few of them. I'm trying to make my way through, and yeah, it's
Good.
wonderful, incredible list of remedies that you have. These books are such a worthwhile investment, and it's so beautifully printed and beautifully laid out, which is something that I always really appreciate. I love it when there's bold print to really make things stand out. It's just, yeah, really, really lovely.
And one thing
I
missing, one thing missing from that book, I did ask, but they wouldn't do it. I wanted a page in there that was blank for notes.
Do you know what? I've already started making notes. I don't know if I should.
Good.
You just make notes wherever. And that was actually, I just want to talk about I don't even, I've got so many questions. My brain is just swimming with where to start. But is there, actually, no, I might jump back to that one. But I really want to talk about the repertory as well, partly because
Okay.
part of me was thinking, oh, I've already bought this free Materia Medicas. Can I really afford to get the repertory as well? I can just learn all the remedies. I don't need the repertory. But the repertory has been amazing, and I have been reading it like a book.
Oh, okay.
Because there's some incredibly interesting rubrics in it. And the thing that I probably appreciate the most is that you have in brackets, so you've got the new remedies here, but you've got in brackets all the old remedies as well. So all our polycrests. So it feels very grounded in that way. When if you have been giving this particular polycrest, it's just not shifting anything, then go and play
Yeah.
around with some of these new remedies. There's like
Yeah.
some really fun stuff there that you can play with. So
Yeah.
that part I really like. It's very beautifully laid out. Something else that I wrote down page 232. But after each chapter, you've got like some notes here. It's actually like the chapter notes at the end of each
Okay. Yep.
like chapter. So like this one, for example, at the end of whatever chapter that was, it says resolution here means the confidence and determination to carry something through. So it's great because you're actually defining for us what it means. And I don't know if this is your years of teaching English as a foreign language. Maybe that's making,
Yes.
maybe that's what it is. And then lack of confidence and poor self esteem carry slightly different meanings. Poor self esteem is what we negatively think about ourselves, and self confidence is what we need to carry something out. Hence the very similar rubrics here given. So after every single chapter, you've got these chapter notes where you are just clarifying what you're meaning. You're just differentiating. There's with the skin rashes chapter, there was quite a lot of great differentiations. I
Yeah.
think ecchymosis was one of it because you said it's actually specifically, it's not bruising, it's if it's more related to like chemo or things like that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't actually know that. So there's like, it really clarifies things very well. And then right in the end, I was so excited when I found this. There is remedies that are useful in pregnancy because my favorite thing is if we can find a client when they're pregnant. I mean, preferably before they get pregnant,
Yeah.
but if we can find them in pregnancy, that's even better. You've got
Absolutely agree.
beautiful remedies here for pregnancy. I have made a note here already. It says
Good.
earthworm for
Yes.
epidural, which I learned from you as well. So I have not used earthworm for epidural, but I'm definitely going to.
Oh,
And
it's a wonderful
then
remedy.
you relate the miasms to the new remedies. And I found this little jewel at the end here. Combination drainage remedies. So you've got some
Yeah.
excellent combinations here. Yeah, that's just amazing. So bravo. I don't know if you'll be able to hear my hand clap because I think the microphone
Okay.
cuts out all the sound, but I think you've done an excellent job and I'm thoroughly enjoying reading through it. So
Thank you. I didn't know my books were novels.
they were, I love reading repertories because I learn about new rubrics and just remedies that I wouldn't have thought of. And like I said, especially because you have our old solid polycrest in there in brackets after the new remedies. So it feels very, very grounded to me. And I love that you've done that.
But I
With,
will add here
Mhm.
that when I was doing that repertory, I was really surprised and very struck by the inadequacy of the books that we completely rely on.
Mm,
Because what I noticed was when I was writing out the new remedies, basically for us as a circle to start with, I wasn't comparing it with anything. I was just simply writing out remedies. Then when I was asked to make the books, I thought I have to ground this in what people already know. All of the stuff that's in these books is just addition. So when I started to compare old remedies between Repertory and Materia Medica, I was appalled at the absolute incompatibility of these two books. I'll take an example. Sepia appears in that Repertory just as an old remedy that compares with some of the new ones. Sepia is completely inadequate as it's written in the Materia Medica because there are lots of rubrics that never appear in the Materia Medica, which should do, and vice versa. And so we rely on these two books, but because we're working in a clinic situation, working from client to client, we don't actually notice, oh, but the Repertory says left side, but the Materia Medica says right side. We miss it all the time. And so it was borne in on me very clearly that actually we need to be really careful when we're using the Materia Medica, not to see that the remedies, not to see that the remedies are the patients. The remedies are simply tools, and the patient is still in front of us. And the patient may have all sorts of variations, and we have to accommodate those variations. So that's why I put the old remedies in there, thinking, actually, we've got to be able to compare this. I need to ask people to do, if you like, instant comparisons. And if it's not instant, then ask the patient to wait. They'll love it if you ask them to wait because it means you can do hard work for them. Does that make sense? So that's why I wrote those extra bits on the old remedies to compare because of the inadequacy of the books that we already use. For me, textbooks are a tyranny
Why do you say that?
because when we're taught homeopathy, and probably lots of other different kinds of subjects, but when we're taught homeopathy, we're taught to rely on these books. But these books are are the result of tributaries all collecting into a river. But you can't sail down every tributary in a delta to the sea. You've got to choose one. The information coming in is too big. Yeah. And so actually we spend our lives in front of patients constantly refining thoughts and energies that are flowing between us and the patients, trying hard to discriminate between maybe a dozen different remedies that are springing up in your mind. Oh, this sounds like that sounds like this is another one. It's like, stop and just let the patient tell you what they need. And they always do. I saw a homeopath yesterday, very experienced homeopath. And she said, oh, patients are different these days, aren't they? And I said, yes, they are. And oh God, I spend hours afterwards. And I said, why do you do that? You should be prescribing on the spot. And I know people feel that they get very alarmed when I say you need to prescribe on the spot. Oh, well, I need to repertorize. And I say, you don't. You studied the repertory for 25 years. You know your Materia Medica for 25. You've done all the tests when you were at college. You can't cram any more in. Put your pen down, read through what the patient told you, and then come out with a result. That's it. And people just work so hard. They cram their heads into their books. It's like, don't do that. The patient's already told you what they need.
Why do you think homeopaths do that? So I'm an on-the-spot prescriber as well. After I'd say
Yes.
the second year, it took me about 2 years, but the last 10 years, I would say I prescribe on the spot
Good.
99% of the time. Now and again, I might not, but I'll usually send them away with a bowel nosert or a tissue salt or something like that, still on the spot. And I might take 24 hours because I saw very quickly that I'm not going to be able to do this job. It's not going to be sustainable if I spend, because I was spending 5, 6 hours. And I know homeopaths who have been in practice for over a decade that still do that. Why do you think we do that? Not we, but the other
I,
homeopaths.
I think it's a confidence issue. I think that homeopathy, if we allow it to be, if we let it be, is intimidating. There's huge responsibility. We are involving ourselves in someone else's story, their history, which is, I mean, some people think of it as a privilege. For me, it's work, a fascinating work. I never tire of it, but it is an enormous thing to go into someone else's, if you like, someone else's house and start saying, where do I start cleaning up? Yeah. So this whole business of carrying what you learned and the way you learned it from the classroom into the clinic room, it doesn't work for me. It's very personal, but it doesn't, and it sounds as though it doesn't work for you. It doesn't work because I need to work at my speed, which sometimes is very fast because I'm kind of told what to do, or very slow, thinking, what am I supposed to be doing here? I don't actually do this in front of the patient, but I feel it. And I will say to the patient, God, you're giving me a hard time today. I say it with a flippancy and a smile, and they grin back and oh, so sorry, they say. And I say, oh, just give me a second. And I read back over what they say. I'm not looking at the book. I will look at the repertory if I've forgotten something. What was that? And I've got the books just to my side here, and I will pick it out, have a look. I will pick out the Materia Medica if what was it said about, swearing, or what was it said about floating off into the atmosphere, whatever it was. They're reminders. I will not use the textbook as my Bible. You can't. You haven't time. And if you're spending 3 hours on every patient at the end of the day, think how many patients you're not seeing because you don't have the time. There's a rhythm to it. Once you catch the rhythm of practice, you can't go back. I imagine you couldn't go back.
Absolutely not. I couldn't do it any other way than what I do now. But I think, I wonder also if it's, I mean, I think homeopathy is exploding worldwide, and there's more homeopaths now that are super busy and have this as their sole income. I wonder if part of that also is not just if people are not getting enough practice. Because what really helped for me is when I got to a place where I was too busy that I just physically could not spend hours on every case anymore because I wouldn't have no time with my family and I was forced to prescribe on the spot. So I wonder, I think for me, some of it was self-worth as well. I almost felt that if I'm not spending 6 hours on a case, I don't deserve to be paid the fee that I was, which was very little, when I first started
Mm.
out. But I was like, oh, this person deserves me spending like 6 hours on them to get my $90 that I was charging at the time or something. So there was definitely self-worth issues as well. But I just wonder if we unpack that as a profession a little bit more, because we do overcomplicate it. And very often, after 3 hours of 6 hours of repertorizing, you come back to the remedy that intuitively you kind of had in your mind to give them anyway. So,
I was helped in a very small way by a lesson we had from a teacher back in the days. This was 30 something years ago.
mm,
And he came in and gave us homework. He gave us a case of a woman. I forget what the circumstances were, but it was a woman in her sort of menopausal years. And he told us about the case. And he said, right, go home, sort that out. And next week when I see you, tell me what you've all decided. It was really interesting because half the class said graphites and the other half of the class said sepia. So we thrashed this out for an hour and a half. We looked at graphites, we looked at sepia, we looked at related remedies. Could it be anything related to that? Blah, blah, blah. And at the end of it, we knew graphites, we knew sepia, textbook wise, but we thought we knew them. And then suddenly I realized, but we don't know what this woman actually did get. So I said to the teacher, oh, by the way, what remedy did you use? Oh, he said, does it matter? We all looked completely aghast. What do you mean? She either got better on graphites or sepia. He said, you might give sepia and she gets better. I might give graphites and she gets better. And I understood suddenly that actually it's the exchange of energies between the patient and the practitioner that is key. What is my understanding of this patient? My understanding of this patient is she needed graphites.
mm.
Yeah.
That's so, so well said. Because the one thing when I do find my brain getting away on me and thinking, should I give this remedy? Should I give this remedy? At the end of the day, you can make a remedy sound as good on paper as you want, but it's not
Yeah.
until you give it to the client and they come back to you that you actually know whether it's worked or not. So sometimes I just have to throw my hands in the air and go, this is the best remedy that seems to fit right now. And, I have gotten, I'm sure you have as well, you got so excited and you read and you think, this is the perfect remedy for the client. Can't wait to give it to them. It fits them to a T. The Materia Medica was written for them. They come back and it's done nothing. And so,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll tell
yeah.
you a little story to illustrate this point. Completely the reverse of what you're saying. Janice had a patient one time, and I happened to follow this patient. And so the patient went away. I sat down and I looked at Janice and I said, are you okay? And she said, yes. And she explained that the last patient had given her a surprise because what had happened was in the previous session, which had been sort of 6 weeks before, Janice had just seen Martin for her own prescription, and she'd taken a remedy. And as she was sitting with this patient, she suddenly lost her sight. She could not see, and she thought, "Oh my God, what's happening here?" Then she realized, actually, this is an aggravation. This is an instantaneous aggravation, and she didn't betray what was happening to the patient because she thought the patient would be frightened. So she continued doing what she does really well, which is looking into space. Her garden window is in front of her, and she looks into space, and you think, oh, she's cogitating and wondering what to give. Anyway, she sat like that for a while. The interview came to an end, and she put her pen, which she hadn't used, down, and she got up, knowing the space in her room really well, turned round to her filing cabinet where she keeps all these big bottles of her remedies, put her hand in the filing cabinet, opened the bottle and asked the patient to hold out her hand and put a remedy in her hand, all without being able to see. She put it back in the filing cabinet, found her way gingerly to sit down again and said, okay, to the patient, that's all for today. Patient went off. So about half an hour later, her sight came back. So Martin said, oh, I'm so sorry. I should have warned you that that might happen. Anyway, the day I went to see her, the patient had just been, and she'd sat down to Janice and she said, oh, Janice, you have no idea. That remedy you gave me last time was fantastic. What was it? Janice had no idea.
That is, you have some epic stories. Can I please make a request for your next book, which is Colin's Stories, and just all of these different stories compiled into one, and plus Colin's Dictionary, because I have never listened to a lecture by you where I have not learned at least 10 new words. Cogitating is the word for today. I
It's
can
a nice one, isn't it?
cogitate. And I love that, yeah, you sprinkle all these, I'm going to call them colonisms from now on in your
Okay.
book. Like I can't, I have to actually buy a dictionary to have with your books because there's some just beautiful words in there. And you just say
Blame
them
my
so
mother.
flippantly as if everyone should know what it means. But I love it because it makes the language a lot more colorful.
Good, good.
Yeah.
Well, that's my mother would be very pleased to hear that because she was a very upright person, very, very English. And whenever I said to her, "Oh, what does such and such mean?" Look it up. So I had to go to the dictionary to look everything up. And then she would say, "What does it mean?" And I had to explain. And that explanation made it stick in there. And I've loved words ever since. Love
That's
it.
lovely. It makes you sound precocious.
Oh, no, I
Um,
wasn't.
no, I want to talk to you about chakras or chakras.
Yes. Yes.
Because a lot of the three Materia Medicas, it talks about chakras and it's good for this chakra and that chakra. And I think some homeopaths that are reading it, if they're not used to this, is going to be a little bit surprised. Why do you think it's important that homeopaths know about chakras? And what would you say to the ones that are a little bit skeptical?
To the ones who are skeptical, I would say keep working at it because it is worthwhile. To those who want to learn more and don't mind about the skepticism, chakras are important because they are much more than an esoteric name of something. To me, the chakras are energy centers that are associated with endocrine glands, the ductless glands of the body. Therefore, there is a very down-to-earth, very practical core to understanding chakras. And you don't have to call them chakras. If you want to, you can call the base chakra your adrenal glands. You can talk about your solar plexus chakra as your liver and gallbladder and spleen and pancreas. I don't care what you call them. What I care about is understanding that the body has very particular, absolutely vital energy centers through which energy passes and from which energy can spring. And all of them are related, none of them are separate. Everything is a rhythmical, or should be. That's part of why our patients coming to see us, because then they've lost some rhythm. But they should be working in harmony and in rhythm. For me, rhythm is vitally important. I'm always looking for what is the rhythm in a patient's life. Everybody's different. Some people have slow metabolism, some people have very fast metabolisms. People have metabolisms that have changed. So if they're hyperthyroid or hypothyroid, that's a hugely important change in rhythm and how it can switch from one to another, all those things. This is all chakra stuff. So all of that's without having to say namaste. Yeah, it's all about the practicalities of using the energy centers to understand a body and how it works and how this particular body in front of me wants to work in order to achieve its life mission. Because I do see it like that. I see every person who comes to see me, what is their reason for being in front of me?
Mm,
Lots of people, oh, just to get better. Yes, but what are you going to do with that getting
mm,
better? I'm not interested in you're better. Show me.
mm. I love that
Yeah.
question. I've heard you mention it before in a lecture. So, what are some things that you've heard people say? So, because when you say that to them, I mean, they must be a little bit shocked when they say, "What do you want to do with getting better?"
It's really surprising how almost everybody understands exactly what I mean,
Mm,
especially the people who do not want to tell me. Yeah, there are people who come to, it's almost as if, I know I'm talking to homeopaths, so I hope I'm understood here. I'm trying not to be judgmental, but there are many people, quite a few people who come and see us. Actually, have no intention of getting better. They're
yes.
going through the motions.
Yep.
It's almost as if they've come to test us.
Yes.
I remember a woman coming to see me. She brought her 9-year-old daughter who was just charming. She didn't say a word, but she sat there with extraordinary politeness. She was very respectful. She smiled. She was a lovely child, but her mum was in total control. And I thought, I'm not getting anything. I don't understand this child at all, except that she's really nice. And the mother was telling me how awful she was. And the mother came twice. And I knew the second time she'd come to prove homeopathy was wrong for herself, not for me. She didn't know I was up there. But I just thought this is really interesting. Homeopathy is a challenge. It's a challenge. What are you going to do with this? And I love that. It's what makes me do this job. When I treat someone who tells me, oh, well, I used to sculpt. Why don't you sculpt now?
Mm.
Yeah. This is big stuff for me. I've had patients who've come to me and they've very sheepishly admitted, well, actually, I'm going to pottery class now. And they're really surprised when I say, what? That's fantastic. Oh, I've heard people say, do you think so? And I say, well, why would I not think so? You're doing something creative. You're doing something purposeful. You're doing something that can make a difference. And I'll never forget one day, Janice said to me, because I do pottery, as you know, she said to me, how's your pottery going? And I said, I can't get there. Oh, she said, what's been going on? We had this discussion about this aspect. And she said, oh no, you've got to do this. Let's try and work on this because what you do, the pots you make, they're healing. And I said, what? And she said, yeah, when somebody picks up a piece of pottery, they're receiving a healing. When somebody looks at a picture, they're receiving healing. And I remembered a book I read on Matisse. Somebody asked Matisse, what makes you paint? And he said, oh, when I can see someone looking at my paintings and feeling contentment, I know I've done the right job. Yeah.
That's
So
beautiful.
to me, that's the point. It's nice if someone's carbuncle disappears or if someone's, throat chakra is opened out or whatever it is. But why? And
Mm.
what are you going to do with it?
Mm. Anybody, because I once did a little survey in my Homeopathy Hangout podcast Facebook group, and I think we had about 120 responses to it. And it was 50-50 down the middle, where I asked the listeners who are homeopaths and who are just home users, and it was 50% like down the middle. So half of them homeopaths, half of them listeners. I would say probably like 25% of the just home users are now homeopaths because there's been an explosion of homeopathy students around the world, which is amazing. I think especially coming out of COVID, homeopathy is just exploding. But I know there's going to be homeopaths that are going to be listening that will know what you're talking about. But I know the home users are going to be going, it's very strange. Why are you saying people would come to you and it's almost like they're testing you? But I tell you, it happens and it's really strange when it does. And I've had so many clients that have sit on the other side and you can tell they are testing you. And I don't know if it was you. I think it was you that I learned this little clinical pearl from the Remedies syphilinum. They all get syphilinum now, but they usually get it they usually get it in a triad. So they all get the thymus gland syphilinum and something else because there's this really beautiful story called The Little Soul in the Sun by Neil Donald Walsh. And that I always say sums up my spiritual belief in one book. You can also go on YouTube and there's a lady that reads it out. It's about 13 minutes long. It's this beautiful little story of a little soul that's in heaven and it's comes down to earth. And anyway, and sometimes when I have these clients, they are very, very hard. Like the energy, you can just like cut it with a knife in the clinic room when you have one of those clients. And I always have to take a deep breath. And then I think of this book, which is basically just that we have made soul contracts with each other to help each other in this lifetime. And so I'm just like thinking back of this client, must have made a soul contract with this person that I would help them. But man, it's hard. That
It is
homeopathy.
hard.
But they are the most satisfying clients when they come back and you give them the
Yes,
right remedy, often nitric acid, and they come back and they're just so lovely and they are converted and now they want to study homeopathy and they think it's great. And so those are always the most satisfying cases as well, the ones that sitting there, they're challenging you, but then, you
yeah,
manage to get in underneath it and actually heal what needs to be healed, which is great.
absolutely. Yes.
You've got so many beautiful crystal remedies in there as well. There's moldavite and there's clear quartz and there's I think aquamarine and there's amethyst and I can't remember all of them now. But you've got an interesting way that your proving group made the remedies. Can you tell us a little bit about that and why you chose that over trituration or immersion?
It is a very good question. So I'm not sure quite how this story begins, actually. Just simply that I don't have the facility here in my home to do triturations. And although I've got lots and lots of crystals, and my wife actually is a crystal healer, I find it really difficult to take a hammer and chip a piece off a stone. It seems sacrilege. Anyway, so I kind of worked out that let's say, to trap the energy of a crystal, I need sunlight or moonlight, not the both at once, but sunlight or moonlight, and mostly sunlight. I needed a clear quartz crystal, and I needed the crystal that I was interested in, and I needed a bottle of ethanol. Now, the pharmacy allows me to make remedies for them because it saves them time, obviously, and they don't know what we're going to come up with. So I have the equipment to make succussion remedies. And so I have the ethanol, which of course most people can't have because it's something that's proscribed. It's 99% alcohol. But I have that. And I have bottles of alcohol, which I put in the sun. And I have a clear quartz crystal next to it. And between them, I have the crystal that I want to make. And so I leave this little group, clear quartz crystal, crystal to be made, ethanol. I leave it in the sunshine for 3, 4, 5 hours. And then I take them away from the sunshine before the moon comes out anyway. And I make sure that there's energy in the bottle by dowsing. And I've been a dowser most of my life. And once I'm sure that there's energy in this bottle, then I succuss 1 drop of that in 99 drops of pure ethanol. And the process is started. On some occasions, that has not been enough. And triturations have been made of remedies like rose quartz, like emerald. The two I like to put together. Now, you can get either one or the other, or both as one from the pharmacy. So I ask for, let's say, rose quartz, trituration, and essence in one. Yeah, that's what I ask for. I can't remember all the other ones that they've done that with, but not all the crystals are done like that. So yes, I'm asking homeopathy, people who practice, to take on trust that these remedies are okay. But then I listen to people like you who are using these remedies, and I think, oh, it's okay. I don't need to worry because actually you're making use of them and you're being
Abs
amazed by them. So it's fine.
Absolutely. I tell you what, it's like, I think it was Rajan Sankaran quote I read ages ago, how he was saying he walks into his clinic skeptical of homeopathy every day, and he leaves at the end of the day completely renewed in his belief that it's just amazing, because you just give people these remedies and you think that's not going to do anything. Well, how can that remedy work? And somehow it does. So
Yeah,
it's actually quite amazing. I
it's
have
extraordinary.
I
Yeah.
have an odd question for you while we're on
Oh,
the
good.
topic. Something that's I homeopathy is my passion. It's my everything. And
Really.
I really like, yeah. I wonder always if there's ways that we can do things better. And apparently, I'm a projector in human design, which is something that I'm still trying to learn a little bit more from what it means. And apparently, my whole family, my husband and my 2 kids are as well. So I need to learn what that means. But one of the things is that I'm always challenging the status quo. Is there a better way that we can do things? How can all of us benefit? How can we how can we create synergy where 1 plus 1 is 10? And something that I wonder that doesn't quite feel right is when somebody like yourself make a remedy, or the guild makes a remedy, and then it goes to a pharmacy and they are the only ones who financially benefit from it. I just wish there was a way that there was more of that kind of flowing back. So something that I've done is I've taken remedies from Denetsa Apala and Reita Poyoinen and Declan Hammond and Eileen Noman and Paul Terrio and a few others. And I've put them on my website, and 10% of every remedy that I sell goes back to them as a royalty remedy. It would just be nice if there was and I see Andreas Tilch with his strep Tilch remedy. There's been probably tens of thousands of that remedy being sold worldwide that he doesn't get anything of. I just wonder if there's something more that could be done for proving groups, especially like yours, that's been going for years. We're proving these new remedies. They go out there to the pharmacies, and people who actually with the inspiration behind it are not getting anything from it. Do you think there's something that we can do to? I mean, are you okay with that? Do you think there's something that we could do about it? Because I kind of feel like that's
Be
one of those
nice.
things. Yeah.
Well, the key to this is in the pharmacies themselves because they
Mm,
are the ones that are able to produce these en masse for everybody.
mm.
I'm not sure what the moral side of this is. Yes, it would be nice to have some royalties, but the whole subject of royalties, it's a porcupine, really. for writing books, for writing music, writing poetry,
Mm.
making remedies. It's a porcupine. And in this country, it's shortly getting even more when royalties for AI they're going to
Oh,
change. And
wow.
AI is going to spread information across the world with nobody getting anything. They're
Yeah, that's
changing
a
the law
worry.
here to do that. It's a worry.
Really?
So I actually appreciate what you're saying here. It would be nice, but we've been doing this for such a long time in association with the Helios Pharmacy that we're in a kind of a flow, a rhythm. And I do this making of remedies from sheer pleasure at thinking, oh my goodness, we're going to make a new remedy which is extraordinary. I don't do all the remedies that we meditate on. I do a proportion of them. Some of them are my inspiration, some of them are from somebody else, all sorts of places they come from. And as a group, we prefer to be fairly anonymous. My name is the one that's known out of the group because I've put my name to the books. But it would be very strange to have a book written by the Guild. And then no one would read them because everyone looks at the word guild and think, oh, it's a secret society. So do you see what I mean? There's an aspect of this where we've actually got to rise above something here in order not to mind too much about the material side. What we need to do is get the information out. But you're right. How nice it would be if we were recognized materially
Mm.
for it.
I think it's
Yeah.
important because, especially because as homeopaths, I feel like that we have like somehow money issues anyway. It's like we're
Yeah.
afraid to charge our worth. It seems I can feel some of that changing now. I'm seeing a lot of that happening, but yeah, we do such hard work. It would be good if there was more of that exchange. And I tell you what, I have the biggest smile on my face every 3 months when I get to send a royalty check to the homeopaths who've created these remedies that sell them through my website. I love it. I love it. And all I do is I charge 10% more for those remedies and I give that on. So it's not like it's taking anything
For you.
from me. And it
Yeah.
feels really good. And I've gotten in a lot of trouble on this podcast a few times for asking questions, but I'm not going to stop asking questions because I think we should always
Oh,
be able to ask questions, see, is there a way that we could do something better? And maybe there's not, and that's fine. But we need to ask these questions and just see,
I agree.
yeah, just see, is there something that we can do, or are we happy with the way that things are done? And that kind of segues me into your books. Where is the best place for people to purchase them? Because something else that I have a bee in my bonnet in is these incredible homeopaths that I've had on the podcast that create beautiful books that then a few of them have told me that they don't actually end up getting that much money from it because of where people purchase it. So I always want to make sure that we let the listeners know where's the best place to purchase it where you will actually benefit from the hard work that you've put into all of this.
Well, it's a good question. There are some books here in England, particularly in London, where you can get books like mine. And of course, I will get royalties from that. And I do have the most amazing agent, Fiona, and I'm so grateful to her because she's hugely generous, gives me 12% instead of 10%. It's wonderful. And she's seen me all the way through these 20 odd years that I've been writing.
And I think she's a
So
homeopath as well, right? I saw in
she
your
is,
book. Yeah, that's amazing.
she is, she is,
Mm.
she is. She's also very, very, very lovely and friendly, and it's
Oh.
great. So the publisher, Watkins, bona fide publisher, they do esoteric books. And they've done me proud. They really have. And I do get a proper stipend from them. I have no quarrel with that. The distribution is poor amongst, not from them, not from Watkins, but the distribution is fairly poor. You'd expect pharmacies to hold my books, you'd expect esoteric bookshops, but actually, mostly the ones in London are the ones you would find it in. There are postal bookshops. There's somebody called Stuart McEwen. He has Minerva books in this country. He's really good. He knows all his books. He knows what he's selling. Wow, that's a gem. Otherwise, it's the dreaded Amazon,
I have to
I'm
admit, of
afraid.
the four books, one of them I got off Amazon. I think the other one was Homeopathic Book Dispensary or something like that. A homeopathic book
Yes, I'm
or
not very familiar with those, but
yeah,
I
I
know
got
there
them from
are
there.
one or two in the States.
Mm.
But I will make a confession. I am a totally inept businessman. I have no idea how much income I make a week. Not a clue. But my wife did economics at university, so she does.
Well, I think we had this email conversation because I am literally exactly the same. Luckily, I have a husband who used to be a financial advisor and does all the financial things, but that's the way it should be. So we can just do our thing and, they do their thing. It makes for a great combination. Final question. What pottery pieces are you working on at the moment?
Oh, I'm doing things that are new to me. So I make lots of things like jugs and vases and bowls. I love fruit bowls. I
Mm.
love expansive things. So I like to make things that are really large. And at the moment, I'm mixing clays. So I wanted to achieve a red clay, which is unusual, a really red clay. So I'm mixing black clay and white clay. One is smooth and one is rough. So I'm getting a texture with it. And I should have brought a piece. I didn't think you were going to ask me a question like that. And I like putting designs on it in black or in mocha brown.
Mm.
And the result is kind of almost Aztec. It's not Aztec, but with lines and diamonds and all sorts of things. And I like to make things zing, you know. Actually, this piece here
I
behind
was
me,
about to ask you. Yeah.
this is
It's
this
beautiful.
is
How did you get
splash.
that color on there?
Well, the grey, the whitey grey. This is a generic glaze that I bought in, but
Mm.
then this is cobalt blue, and I used a turkey baster, and I just aimed it at the pot and splashed.
Turkey baster. I love it.
Good, isn't it?
It looks amazing. It's great. It's always, for me, it's the stories. It's the story behind the thing. And I think that's what I love with this podcast as well, and why I want you to put out a book of stories. Stories just fascinate me, and it helps just for something to stick in your mind when you have a story to go with it, I think. So
Yeah.
please, can the next project be Colin's book of stories? And
Okay.
and at the bottom, and Colinisms.
Colonisms. Oh my goodness, yes. I'm going to be embarrassed about that now.
Oh, I love it. Is there any final message that you want to leave our listeners with, Colin? And I mean, both your children are homeopaths as well, and they're at just griffithpractice.co.uk, I think was the website from memory, or any other place that
It
people
is,
can get
but
hold of you?
yeah, no, my children, they're slightly separate but together. So my son is an osteopath,
Mm,
but he did homeopathy to start with. It's
mm,
very funny. He said to me what he transported builders materials,
mm.
and he looked really depressed one day and he leant against the cooker and he said, "Ugh." So I said, "Come on, Nick, what are you going to do with your life?" Anyway, so he said, "I don't know." So I said, "Right, go to college. Go to homeopathic college." Oh, all right. So he did the years of hard graft at homeopathy. The day he graduated, he booked in with the osteopathic course. Absolutely. And he
Wow.
did 4 more years, university. He's a cranial osteopath, and he hasn't looked back because he doesn't like sitting at a desk.
Mm,
He's an Aries. He likes the back of a wave on a surfboard. That's him.
mm.
So what's the point of sitting at a desk like you and I do, chewing over something in his head? He likes talking. He likes people's bodies to work. But he does do homeopathy, and he comes and sees me here to send off remedies from my pharmacy here. My daughter is a homeopath, but a moment of astrology, she has something called the sun in the 12th house. So if somebody has the sun in the 12th house, they never 100% know that they're doing the right thing. Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm enjoying it, but am I? Okay, so this is how she's been for the last nearly 20 years. She's an eighth homeopath, but it's like, Dad, what am I doing?
Well, I
So,
wonder, maybe look at human design as well. That's certainly given me a few answers too. I know my clinic manager, Amy, I'm sure she won't mind. She's a manifesting generator. And one of their things is that they do something and then they go on to the next thing, they go on to the next thing. But actually, their mission in this lifetime is to try lots of different things. And as they're doing it, they're learning. And, she's just in her element because she's doing homeopathy and this and that and on the reception.
wonderful.
And it's just always, oh, there's always something new, which is really nice. And I think for both of us, once we kind of understood our human design a little bit better, a few things clicked into place. And then you can kind of come to peace with that. But I mean, astrology does that as well. This is just another tool to get there.
Just another
I'm
tool.
I'm an Aries too. I don't know what that means, but I know that you're a Taurus. You've said that in a few of the
Well, it
lectures.
makes me skeptical.
Is it
It
amazing?
makes me put on a yoke every day to plow a furrow, and I do it, not with very good grace sometimes. But at the end of the day, I look at the furrow and I think, is that straight? And I'm deeply, deeply dissatisfied with myself if it's not a straight furrow. But if you're an Aries, I have to tell you, you do Aries beautifully. It's like you come on screen, hi guys, what are we going to do today? And you're right there because
Oh, it
that's what
gets me in trouble, so much trouble all the time. I just feel I feel like I keep my mouth shut. something I've always said if I was going to study anything else, well, actually, there's a few things. It'll probably be TCM, astrology, but actually, osteopathy would be one of them because I would love to be able to palpate the difference that a homeopathic remedy makes. That would be really cool. I know Jill Turland in her Mega Potency book talks about her husband that was as an osteopath as well. I don't know if she did osteopathy, but they would give the mega potencies and be able to literally palpate the changes. And I know one of your lectures, you were talking about an osteopath that you were working with, and they were actually saying that they could feel the energy of the person, like kind of outside their body. It was sitting over there. And then you were saying about where is the energy of the person that you need to treat? It might not even be right in front of you. It might be to the left or the right or to the top or the bottom. I think
Absolutely.
osteopathy would be amazing. And I won't believe for one moment that Nick isn't using his homeopathy all the time in his practice or the way that a
He,
homeopath thinks.
he is, and actually, I make use of him too. There have been times when I've been there with him, and I've asked him to, so to speak, test a remedy. If I'm not sure, I said put the remedy on the patient's chest usually, and see what the palpated energy will do. And he will say, "Dad, this has gone dead, or it's sort of collapsed." So I said, does it feel as though we're on the right track?" He said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So I've put a higher potency. Oh my God, that's it.
Wow.
Yeah. So the palpation of energy is hugely important. I think homeopaths do it, but they don't know they do it. A patient sits down in front of us and we're engaging with an energy if we're in the right space. And we can sense whether we're going to engage with it fully or if we're going to be cautious or if we're going to go over the top. There have been occasions when a patient sat down and I know, even though they're not crying, they've got no expression on their face, there's weeping going on. And I only have to ask a question, innocuous question, and then it starts. And it's not clever, it's I'm used to it. Or like the one you've just cited, the patient I talked about last week, where the patient had actually had an anesthetic and they're not in their body because it wasn't comfortable for their spirit to re-enter the body. The body wasn't ready for it because it had been changed in the operation.
Wow.
That does happen.
Mm.
Yeah.
And we can
Uh,
certainly sense that change when a client comes back after they've had a good prescription and their energy changes. You can just feel it. It's
oh,
palpable the moment they walk in. You're like, okay, this feels very different. So I
yeah.
understand what you're saying. But
Like that
you
wonderful.
couldn't, I mean, how lucky are your kids to grow up with a homeopath and a crystal healer? I mean, it really couldn't be any better than that. And you wouldn't expect them to do any. I'd be really sad if they, were, I don't know, fishermen or I don't know. I mean, every career has its merits and we need absolutely everyone. It takes all different sorts. But I'm just really glad that they have made use of the lovely family that they've been born into and the gifts that they would have seen growing up. So it's very interesting. I always say I'm going to be really interested to see what my kiddies do when they grow up. They're 13 and
I was
10
going to
now.
ask
So
you.
there's a few years to go still. My daughter has for a few years now, at 10 years old, said she wants to be a homeopathic vet and an artist on the weekends. So we'll see. My
That
son
sounds
is not,
decisive.
yeah, he's not, it's going to be interesting. He always asks me about my cases and he'll say, Mummy, what people did you treat today? And so obviously won't give any specifics, but I'll say a little bit about this and this. And what remedy did you give? Like he's always really interested. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's something interesting about children at the moment, not at the moment, but with my children who've grown up with homeopathy and they have taken it up as professions, this is not actually the norm. We find that the norm is many children come to us and they hugely benefit from homeopathy. They get rid of their eczema or their tummy problems or whatever it is, their headaches. And then in their teens, they stop coming and they won't come. I was like, what happened there? It's really interesting how they just go no more. They don't want any more. And some of it, I'm afraid, is modern technology. They've been swept up into AI and
Yeah.
and internet
YouTube.
and games, YouTube,
Mm.
and they're being swept along by a river of information, which carries all sorts of information that's got nothing to do with esoteric stuff. It's like, oh no, I'm not going to touch that anymore. It's really interesting. And some of the remedies that we've been proving recently have come up as remedies that help people come away from the misinformation, the disinformation from technology.
Oh my goodness. You just leaving. Are you seriously going to leave us with a cliffhanger? Are you kidding me?
I will say
Uh,
one thing. The last remedy that we did was
hmm.
called fig.
Fig.
Ficus carica, fig, the fig. And it was one that I decided that I wanted to do with the group because it came from my garden in Spain.
Mm.
I looked at this fig. Oh my goodness, they're to die for, these figs. They are delicious. So not my plant, actually. It leans over into my garden and it was self-seeded. Anyway, when I took it off the branch, it leaked, it exuded a white, it looked like white mucus. I thought, interesting. And I opened the fig, and obviously we know what an inside of a fig looks like. It's very rich inside. And then I discovered that when you eat a fig, you're eating a flower. You're not eating a fruit. And I thought, this is really interesting. That's what led me into it. And we did a proving in Spain, and we did a proving here with two different groups. They are different, remarkably different. But when we did it here, it became quite evident that fig is a remedy to help people not be swept up in false information, not be swept up in electronically delivered stuff.
Mm.
Let's call it stuff because it is stuff. And for them to become much more individualistic and less globalized. I don't know about you, but I've noticed that the whole issue of globalization is beginning to shrink. It's like globalization, you can't stop it, but actually people are saying, enough, enough. I don't want this. Why am I looking at the news? Why am I looking at YouTube all the time? I need to concentrate on what's in front of me. It's so much healthier. So this came out of fig. Is that a
That
cliffhanger?
is that is great. And so we can look forward to new Materia Medica number 4.
It'll take a long time because we only do 12 a year. No, 6 a year now, not 12. But yeah, it'd be nice.
I cannot believe that you have been doing provings for this long, because the proving group that I'm part of, the Golden Spiral proving group, I said to Dennis a little while ago, I go, I don't want to be doing any more provings for quite a while. It's honestly, it takes up so much time, and there's so many scary things that can happen. When we did the cassowary, there were a couple of car accidents and a couple of like pretty scary stuff that happened. Yeah. So anyway, that's a whole other story. I've just realized that there were so many other questions I wanted to ask you, but one was about Mediterranean Americana, which I've used a couple of times as well, which is oh my goodness, such a great remedy. There's so many good remedies. So really, we're going to need like another 10 hours at least. But for our listeners, I just want to say, if you are a homeopath and you would like to play around with some kick-ass remedies and really expand your practice, and if you have cases that have just been a little bit stuck and you don't know what to do,
Mm.
dive into these new Materia Medicas. They are just really, really cool. And definitely, like I said, I was like, oh, do I spend the money on the repertory or don't I? And I'm so glad I did. I don't think I would have been able to get as much benefit out of this three Materia Medicas without the repertory. Like I said, it's got those golden bits after each chapter. It's really easy to use, beautifully laid out. So, huge kudos to your publisher. And I think to end off with, can you please pronounce Remedy 12 in your new Materia Medica, which is volcanic ash? Because I know you've worked very hard on pronouncing that.
That's good. I hope I get it right. If there's an Icelandic homeopath out there, they'll probably laugh. But I understand from the internet that it is pronounced Eyjafjallajökull.
Well, I can't say whether you've done a good job or not because I have no idea, but I have not used volcanic ash in clinic yet. I am excited to give it a go.
Oh, let me know when you do.
I will
I
do.
find it magical,
Mm, mm.
magical. All to do with families.
Ah. Oh, Colin, I could talk to you for hours. Thank you so much for today. I'm so excited. I'm excited also for the homeopaths who get these remedies and start playing around with them, because there's such good stuff in there. We're getting so much stuckness in our cases these days. And I think it's just all the suppression, all the medication, all the stuff that's being sprayed on us in our water, wherever we go. And so any tool that can help us in clinic to shift a case, or like all the unusual cases, all the weird and wacky things, and you can just feel this is not a polycrest. It needs something different. I
Yes,
just feel the
yes.
answers are in this new Materia Medica. So thank you so much for coming along today. I really appreciate it.
Good. Very nice indeed. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you all.
It's a pleasure. Bye.
Bye bye.